right now.
Swapping parties for protests on the eve of Oscar weekend. Hollywood stars among the hundreds at a Beverly Hills rally denouncing President Donald Trump's immigration policies.
It's our time to tell our elected officials to do their job. That we will not tolerate chaos, ineptitude, and warmongering.
It's an assault on human dignity.
Friday's rally was organised by Hollywood agency UTA and took place instead of its annual Oscar party. It follows Trump's bid to ban travel to the US from 7 majority Muslim nations. It's this crackdown that prompted Iranian film director Asghar Farhadi to boycott Sunday's ceremony. Speaking to the rally via a video from Tehran, he thanked his cinema colleagues.
I'm grateful to the solidarity offered by my fellow filmmakers and the UTA family who have reacted responsibly to discrimination and injustice.
Some Trump supporters were also spotted. They said people should be patient and give Trump's new policies a chance.
Before the glitz and glamour has even begun, the 2017 Academy Awards are being touted as the most diverse in years.
I've been standing in the same place for 18 years.
Well, I've been standing with you.
Standout performances from the likes of Viola Davis in Fences, Octavia Spencer in Hidden Figures, and the Academy's first Muslim nominee, Mahershala Ali, who's up for Best Supporting Actor in Moonlight. Behind the scenes too, there are nominations for 4 black directors and documentary filmmakers, making this, say Hollywood insiders, a unique year in the industry.
We have come a long way very quickly since Oscars So White. I think this is the first time ever that there has been a black actor or actress nominated in each of the acting categories in the same year, so that's really exciting.
It means something.
I doubt it.
Yeah, I don't think so.
But La La Land, essentially a love letter to Hollywood, is dominating with 14 nominations. The musical's already scooped plenty of awards and been praised and torn down in almost equal measure. But when it comes to diversity at the Oscars, some in the Hispanic community are still deeply unhappy.
Between now and next year, we're going to make a lot of noise about this.
The president of the National Hispanic Media Coalition says things need to change drastically.
Come on. We're part of this nation. We're 18% part of this nation. We speak English, the vast majority of us. We are very good actors, very good directors, very good writers. The opportunities are not coming our way.
Good evening, fellow SAG-AFTRA members and everyone at home and everyone in airports that belong in my America.
As award seasons go, this has also been one of the most political. Iranian director Asghar Farhadi, who's a nominee, will not be attending Sunday's ceremony because of what he calls an unjust travel ban. So it may be more diverse than in previous years, but this year's Oscars may also be about more than who takes home a golden statuette. When every awards ceremony this year has turned out to be political, it's fair to expect the same thing will happen here. But this is also the year the industry itself comes under close scrutiny. In previous years, the hashtag Oscars So White gained traction, but this year, 6 black actors are nominated for awards.
The bill to repair California's crumbling roads, dams, and other critical infrastructure hammered by an onslaught of storms this winter could top $1 billion, including nearly $600 million alone for damaged roadways that more than doubles what the state budgeted for road repair emergencies, officials said Friday. Adding to the problems, many communities have drained their emergency budgets and are looking to the state and federal government for help. But on top of the latest damage, the nation's most populated state is struggling with the $6 billion annual backlog of repairs for roads, highways, and bridges that leaders can't agree on a way to fund.
A mass spell took place at Trump Tower this week, which was intended to restrain Trump's power, but not necessarily cause harm. The group outside Trump Tower was a varied one. Some called themselves witches, some practiced spells and tarot but didn't identify as witches, and a few had never cast a spell before. Even singer Lana Del Rey participated, so, there's that. One woman told BuzzFeed that she is a Christian mystic named Donna who shouted a counter prayer while brandishing a mirror at the witches to reflect the spell back at them. Multiple times she called the binding spell a slavery spell because it's meant to overpower someone else's will, she said. Also, some Christians have been tweeting anti-witch prayers and religious imagery after one Christian nationalist website put out a call to action. Kat said she considered the spell a form of peaceful resistance. The main goal of the witchery is to actually do something to stop Trump, bind him, stop him, and all the horrible things he's doing in his administration, they say. This week, Fox News anchor Shepard Smith defended CNN after the network and several others were shut out of a White House Q&A over fake news comments from Donald Trump. During his program, Smith said, "For the record, fake news refers to stories that are created, often by entities pretending to be news organizations, solely to draw clicks and views and are based on nothing of substance." He then added, "In short, fake news is made up nonsense delivered for financial gain. CNN's reporting was not fake news. Its journalists followed the same standards to which other news organizations, including Fox News, adhere."
We're going to build the wall. Don't worry about it. We're building the wall. We're building the wall. In fact, it's going to start soon. Way ahead of schedule.
That's the promise President Donald Trump made in his speech at the Conservative Political Action Conference on Friday. And not long after, U.S. Customs and Border Protection released this, a notification it will soon be taking submissions for, quote, prototype wall structures. It's the first tangible step toward meeting Trump's executive order on border security that he signed in January. Trump has said the barrier would run for 1,000 miles along the nearly 2,000-mile Mexican border. Trump routinely calls his proposed border structure a wall, but he has said before that some areas might be fenced instead. Some sort of barrier already runs some 700 miles along the border. He estimates it will cost $12 billion, but some have said a wall that's 1,000 miles long, 50 feet tall, and 10 feet below ground could cost upwards of $38 billion to build. The American people and American companies will foot the bill. Trump has said Mexico will pay the U.S. back, but Mexico's current president and 2 former presidents have said that's not going to happen.
Since the 2016 election, there have been a lot of mass demonstrations against President Donald Trump and his administration. Now, Republican lawmakers across the country want to crack down on protesters. At least 18 states are considering legislation aimed at deterring demonstrators. Most proposed laws ramp up the penalties for blocking traffic. Some even protect drivers who hit protesters with their cars from prosecution. But others go a lot further. Michigan's House passed a bill in December restricting, quote, mass picketing. If signed into law, authorities could hand out $1,000 fines to picketers and $10,000 fines to organizing groups each day if the demonstration is deemed illegal. A more recent Arizona bill would make organizers financially liable for any damage if protests turn violent. It would also reclassify riots as racketeering, which can have a penalty of more than a year in prison. Those penalties concern the American Civil Liberties Union, which argues the proposed Arizona law is, quote, intended to chill First Amendment speech. Some of the bills cite the need to combat so-called paid protesters.
There have been clashes in the western French city of Nantes. Unrest broke out as more than 2,000 people gathered to demonstrate against Marine Le Pen. The far-right presidential candidate is due to hold a rally in the city today. Police say 3 officers were wounded and several shop windows smashed.
First, teenagers have blockaded more than a dozen schools in the French capital and have clashed with security guards as protests against police brutality continue to rock the country. Police used tear gas to disperse the protesters. Over a dozen demonstrators were also arrested. The rally follows a recent spate of nationwide demonstrations that sparked after the alleged sexual abuse of a black man by police in a Paris suburb earlier this month. Thousands of people have taken to the streets since then. Police have made over 200 arrests.
Malaysia's health minister said on Sunday that autopsy results suggested a nerve agent caused a very serious paralysis, which killed the exiled Kim Jong-nam, half-brother of North Korea's leader. Police completed a sweep of the budget terminal, where he was poisoned, and declared it safe of any deadly toxin. Friday's revelation by Malaysian police that the banned chemical weapon VX nerve agent was used to kill Kim raised the stakes significantly in a case that has broad geopolitical implications. The killing of Kim Jong-nam took place amongst crowds of travelers at Kuala Lumpur's airport and appeared to be a well-planned hit. Kim died on the way to a hospital just hours later.
Thousands of people working in Italy's telecommunications sector staged a rally in Rome's Piazza della Repubblica on Saturday. The march was organized by a string of base unions, including USB and Cobas. It aimed at exposing what demonstrators referred to as deteriorated working conditions at Italy's leading mobile communications company TIM and other sector groups. TIM is a brand held by once state-owned Telecom Italia. Today, French media group Vivendi is Telecom Italia's majority shareholder with a nearly 25% stake in the Italian telecommunications company.
TIM has about 48,000 employees. 32,000 of them have already been given solidarity contracts, meaning that most of us work less hours to keep our jobs. Our salaries have largely been cut. What else they expect from us, while we see our CEO and his appointed managers receive up to a €55 million bonus? Does it sound right?
TIM workers lament that a far too big slice of the cake goes to executive managers and high-level board members. Also, outsourcing is a commonly used practice at the communication company. Unions fear that as many as 5,000 layoffs may be in the making.
In the eastern Ukrainian town of Avdiivka, it's hard to believe a ceasefire exists. Shells have smashed through 8 houses. Power supplies are out again. They were only restored a few days ago. They'd been damaged in an earlier attack. No one's been hurt this time, but lives have been shattered.
It hit and there was a huge fire and it was all burning. I quickly put on my clothes and went outdoors, and my wife brought my wheelchair. It also hit my neighbour's house. When will it all end?
Those monitoring the ceasefire can do little but document the damage, while the government in Kiev blames pro-Russian rebels. A ceasefire deal known as the Minsk Agreement was signed in 2015. Negotiated by Ukraine, Russia, France and Germany, it's been broken several times. As the Ukraine ceasefire looks increasingly precarious, 1,000 kilometers to the north, German tanks are trundled into Lithuania, part of NATO's Russian deterrent.
We have some security issues after 2014 events in Crimea, and we are happy to see NATO allies supporting us in Lithuania.
In Avdiivka, the shelling goes on, the tension grows, and the ceasefire continues to crumble.
A deadly terrorist attack in central Syria on Saturday has threatened to thwart negotiations towards a political solution. The government's envoy, Bashar al-Jafari, demanded a firm condemnation from all opposition groups over the attacks carried out by insurgents on security offices in Homs, which left dozens dead. However, opposition suggests security forces could have been behind the attack. Our correspondent Kate Parkinson said the comments from both sides have left the negotiation process hanging in the balance.
Well, we are expecting negotiations to continue today. Certainly meetings are expected here at the UN. It's likely again that the terror attacks in Homs will continue to dominate discussions. And even though yesterday the Syrian government delegation stopped short of saying that they would suspend the negotiations, it does remain to be seen how they will proceed now. The opposition delegation have in some ways refused to directly condemn the attacks. Certainly, it's a bit of a diplomatic dance at this stage. Both sides making allegations, making demands, and neither of them really at this moment addressing the reasons that they are here in Geneva, which is to try and bridge the gaps on negotiating a political solution to the crisis, the conflict in Syria. Suddenly terrorism and ongoing violence really overtaking proceedings here at this point.
Dozens of Chinese businesses have been naming their products after Ivanka. That's amid turbulence in the relationship with Washington. RT's Emily Sue looks at what role Ivanka Trump could play in China.
While fashion giants in the U.S. are busy pulling Ivanka Trump's products off their shelves to avoid losing their anti-Trump customers, dozens of companies in China are rushing to cash on the first daughter's name. From wallpaper to alcohol retailers, 65 companies want to use Ivanka as a trademark for their products.
Hashtag Ivanka Trump. Happy shopping.
Chinese Twitter Weibo has an Ivanka the Goddess fan club with 11,000 followers. They think American companies are simply missing the point. And one of the reasons why Chinese people love Ivanka is this. She made a surprise visit to the Chinese embassy for Lunar New Year.
Welcome. How are you, Ambassador? Happy Chinese New Year.
Experts say Ivanka has the potential to become Trump's unofficial ambassador to Beijing.
Ivanka Trump did play a role of like a softening, smoothing out the controversies created by Donald Trump. In terms of the relationship between the U.S. and China, I think she can play that role, to narrow the gap, let's say, of understanding or bring the two countries together.
And let's just say Ivanka already found her diplomatic successor.
These arid hillsides were once covered with thick stalks of corn. But these days, Tranquilino Vasquez is lucky to salvage a few underdeveloped cobs. The parched soil in this part of eastern Guatemala is a result of 5 consecutive years of drought. The impact on subsistence farmers has been devastating.
We've had a number of years when the land hasn't produced anything. It's a disaster. Weather phenomena like El Nino have transformed the planet. That's why our land looks like this, and why we don't have any crops.
Beans and corn are vital to rural communities throughout Guatemala. Many families are eating just twice a day, and chronic child malnutrition is rising.
Tranquilino wakes up each morning wondering how he will feed his family. It's a worry that all of his neighbors share. Reserves of corn and beans are running out fast, and nobody has enough money to keep buying from the market until the next harvest.
An outbreak of the crop-destroying armyworm has spread to the Democratic Republic of Congo, laying waste to 63,000 hectares of corn and suddenly causing prices to triple. The outbreak has destroyed about 80% of the corn in 4 regions along the country's southeastern border with Zambia. That's resulted in the price of a 25-kilogram bag of corn rising to $30 from about $10. The situation in Congo is particularly concerning because the country's other 2 main staples, which are banana and cassava, are also currently affected by other diseases.
America's forests are vanishing, and according to a new report, they're also farther apart. Between 1990 and 2000, the distance between forests grew an average of almost 1,700 feet, or 14%. That doesn't sound like a big deal, but it could actually have major consequences for the ecosystem. For one thing, it can put a major dent in biodiversity. It's harder for different populations of the same animal to mate if their habitats grow too distant. But the authors of the report say that loss of forests can also affect the local climate, which might even change the types of animals that thrive in the area. The problem is worse in the West, where forests face more threats from fires and invasive species like the emerald ash borer beetle. The study also found something surprising. Deforestation is happening faster in rural forests than urban ones. The researchers say they hope their work might help change forestry policy.
Inside an odd-shaped cedar building in Horsham, Victoria, workers methodically extract seeds from plants which are preserved in vaults kept at a constant minus 22 degrees Celsius. The vaults, filled with 130,000 types of seeds, contain a living catalogue of Australia's agricultural history.
We have a lot of material here which can make the difference between
people starving or not starving, and that's what it's about. It's financial security, it's food security, it's just having that surety around agricultural production that people are going to have enough to get by.
Sally Norton, who heads the Australian Grains Gene Bank, says the key can be found in a fraction of what's stored here: wild and ancient seeds which have evolved into highly adaptive species.
We have native plant species that grow here, which could improve the productivity of sorghum for the world. So across Africa, Asia, pigeon pea, same sort of thing. Rice as well. We've got really pure, unadapted, untapped resources here of wild species and ancient grains.
That's important in countries prone to wildfires and as weather extremes become more common. It's also critical to meeting the needs of a rapidly growing global population.
We're going to have 9 billion people in a couple of decades away. Currently, we producing set amount of food, and to feed those people, we're expecting that we need to double those productions.
But those same climate extremes also pose a threat to Australia's wild species. And a lot of these wild species live in very specific or narrow environments. It's where they've learned to adapt over the years, which brings us to another very real threat to their existence, and that's urbanization. That's why there's an urgent effort underway to collect them here and across the globe.
I think we're scratching the surface on actually knowing where these ancient grains and wild species are in Australia, but I think we haven't even started to scratch the surface on the characteristics that they could provide to improving agricultural production around the world.
That's why Norton and many other researchers consider these wild seeds to be both an important part of agricultural history and a vital part of our future.
In a remote part of West Antarctica, Mount Saipal stands alone. It's one of the continent's largest volcanoes, rising more than 3,000 metres from the sea. It's surrounded by pack ice most of the year, and even using a helicopter, we're lucky to get on land. There's a large group of Adelie penguins on the only beach. And on the headland above, we find they have a rookery. Less than 1% of Antarctica is ice-free, making a place like this prime real estate for nesting.
The nice thing about penguins and other seabirds is they give you this sort of canary in the coal mine indication as to what's happening in the Southern Ocean. So this tells us a little bit about what's happening in this part of the ocean next to Mary Birdland. And this is a significant colony, it's big.
The chicks' parents are still much in demand, sometimes from their own offspring, but frequently from other hungry birds hoping for a feed. It's late in the season and many chicks are exercising their wings in preparation to leave. As far as we know, scientists have never visited this penguin colony before, so the group we're with want to know how large it is and whether there's any other species living here. We have behind me a whole lot of Adelie penguin. This chap here, he's looking a bit odd because he's losing his baby feathers. He's just a few months old. As you can see, he's very friendly. Parts of Antarctica are warming faster than any other place on the planet. As this happens, scientists have noticed that colonies of Adelie penguins like these are moving south, perhaps in search of the cold. Their prize nesting sites are being taken over by other, more resilient penguin species.
We've got indicators of change in terms of temperature measurements, ice recession and the movement of birds to different habitats, all of which suggest to us that change is going in one particular direction. The peninsula is getting warmer, the ice is getting less, and some of the more sensitive species are having a harder time.
In the coming weeks, the new chicks will join their parents on the journey along the ice cliffs to where they can safely climb down to the sea. This colony appears to be thriving, but it's not clear whether this year's brood will always return to this site, or whether our warming climate will force them to find a new place to nest.